Oh, hi there. Welcome to Shogi in the West, an English language podcast for active Shogi players and Shogi learners around the world. In this podcast, we focus on the topics and the people that matter to those of us outside Japan trying to find our way in the game. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, this is going to be a solo episode. I don't have an interview to do this week, so I thought I'd bring up a sort of recent topic that is still looming in my mind and my heart. So this week's episode is a look back at Shogi Club 24, the venerable online shogi site that has served the shogi world, shogi players for 27 years, and will unfortunately be closing at the end of this year on December 31st. So December 31st, 2025, the doors, the virtual doors of Shogi Club 24 are going to be closed. I will include the link to the official announcement in the show notes. And as always, any link I mention, I will leave in the show notes below. But this is a relatively short announcement, so I will read it here. This is translated by Google Translate. Kume-san, the, I believe, creator, founder, maintainer, and owner of the site, I believe, did not put up in English. Unsurprisingly, as the site is not really localized, well, it is localized, but it's so lightly localized. So long story short, there was no translated version of this message. It was only in Japanese, and I am translating it with Google Translate. So as always, take any translation with a grain of salt, but hopefully the spirit of the message is retained. And again, I will leave a link to this in the show notes. And so here it is. Closing Shogi Club 24 this year. Again, translated by Google Translate. Thank you for your continued use of Shogi Club 24. We opened Shogi Club 24 in late 1998 and have been providing game services ever since. I have been thinking about retiring soon, but as we have not yet developed the necessary personnel to take over, it has become difficult to continue Shogi Club 24 beyond next year. For this reason, we will be closing Shogi Club 24 on December 31st, 2025. We apologize to everyone who has enjoyed the service, and we appreciate your understanding. Thank you very much for your patronage since the service began. It's signed and dated October 1st, 2025, Shogi Club 24 owner, Hiroshi Kume. And then at the bottom it continues with an asterisk. To Smartphone 24 game app users who have remaining premium memberships in 2026, we will announce the refund procedure in an announcement around December. We appreciate your patience until then. So I did not see this directly. I learned of this through Twitter, through x.com, and the Shogi Wars account was the means that was the place to deliver the news. And I will read some of their translated messages here about it. And again, I will provide the links. And again, these are translated. And these two tweets that I'm going to read, or these two X posts, were translated in line in the x.com app, which I believe is going to Google Translate, but I'm not sure if it's Grok Translate or something else. But anyway, the first one, Shogi Club 24 is a revolutionary online shogi dojo pioneered by Kume-san. Thank you very much for your continued support over the years. In the future, Shogi Wars will offer an account linking function with Shogi Club 24, as well as an environment where players can play auto-matching matches under the 24 rule time limit. And then they replied to their own message. It is impossible to replace the historical existence of Shogi Club 24. We hope that Shogi Wars will allow all those who loved Shogi Club 24 to feel at least a little of that warmth and nostalgia. Yeah. So to me it hits. It hits. To me that hits. It gets me. I first learned of the closing, as I said, through those Shogi Wars X.com posts that I just read. Taking a sip here. It's cold. Sip of hot coffee. I was lying in bed after waking up and just putting off the act of getting the day started. You know how sometimes, I don't know, maybe I'm the only person who does this, but sometimes I'll see, like, I'll go through Discord. My wake up routine, after I wake up, I grab the phone, I do my Chessable. As I've said there, even though I don't play chess, I have over an 1,800-day streak of doing Chessable. I do my Chessable. I check mail, I check the Discord, and then I sometimes, not always, but sometimes will check the few accounts that I follow on X.com just to get some shogi going. They're mostly all shogi. So I was just putting off the day started, and I have to confess, I was a bit stunned. If I remember correctly, I read through twice just to make sure what I was reading was actually what I thought I was reading. The site, Shogi Club 24, has been a bedrock of the online shogi world for almost 30 years. Much longer than I've been playing. I didn't even know of shogi 30 years ago, let alone play it. There are player accounts on that site with literally 250,000 rated games played. That doesn't even take into account whatever unrated games they would have played. I've done the math before. It almost seems impossible, and the player is not a bot. I know that people have had different theories of how some people could have 250,000 games. And I wish I would have done the math before beginning this podcast. But I made some sort of estimate of game length and the number of times. And essentially, it's years of continuous play to match this 250,000, if I'm remembering that correctly. So, if I'll do that math and I'll put that in the notes as well later. But 250,000 games played, and it is not uncommon for me as I look at players to see 50,000 games played, 60,000 games played, 70. I can keep counting. We can make this a stream about counting, or make this a podcast about counting. There are usernames on Shogi Club 24 that I see logged in and looking for games every single time I join. Every single time I log into the site, they are there playing. They're not idling, they're playing. What are these players going to do? That was one of the things that hit me. When weird things happen, when you hear weird news, and sometimes you're just taking it in, it's always interesting to me anyway, of the kinds of things that pop in your mind at those moments. And so when I'm reading this, that was one of the things that that popped in my mind. What are these players going to do? There is, without getting too dramatic about it, there is nothing quite like Shogi Club 24. And it can often, even if there wasn't anything special about Shogi Club 24, regardless, it can often be rough to start over at a new place when you've built up such a history at another one. So at another online site, or an IRL offline site, or company or group or club. It's tough. When something that you have dedicated years, potentially, of your life in, or spent years of your life in, to just pack your bags, get out and go somewhere else, can be difficult. I personally don't have a massive history at Shogi Club 24. I think, and this, there may be a way to verify this. I don't know without searching through my game history, and their game history seems to have sort of cleared a bit in the past. So I don't know for sure, but I believe that as of the release of this podcast, which is late 2025, I have been playing there around 3 to 4 years. I started playing there around 3 to 4 years ago, I would say. Probably a little before I started playing over the board at local clubs. I pulled up my record for this podcast, and that record sits at 308 wins and 253 losses. So 561 total games played. I've mostly lingered in the lowest rating tab, regardless of improvement in ratings growth on the other sites. And if you know the Shogi Club 24 UI, you sort of probably know what I mean of being the tab. The various ratings are grouped in tabs, presumably to make the UI more manageable as players log in, and thousands of players might be logged in at one time. So on Shogi Club 24, the lowest tab was, I believe, beginner to 11Q, I believe, is the lowest tab. And for most of my Shogi Club 24 career, for most of my Shogi career, that's where I've lived, fluctuating between 13 and 14Q for a long, long time. Again, regardless of what I was doing on other sites, as my ranking was increasing in other sites, I still pretty much it felt hard stuck at 13 to 14Q. It's only recently that I cracked into the single digits and began climbing there in the single digits while streaming. It obviously, I feel I've improved a lot since those early days, but I think I also started changing a little bit about how I accepted matches on Shogi Club 24. I started avoiding potentially obvious sandbaggers and whatnot. And so I felt able to play people more at a realistic rating, more at my rating, and I was able to slowly pull out of that lower tab. And from there, it was once in that second tab, it feels like there are more players that are sort of at their realistic-ish rating there. So it's more reasonable that if you deserve to be in that tab, you sort of stay there and you don't often get sucked back down into the bottom tab. Unless you start accepting challenges from people in that bottom tab they're almost like ghouls or ghosts. They're these creatures rising up and just trying to, like, out of the muck and trying to pull you back in. And yeah, but anyway, so all this is to say that I'm not even one of Shogi Club 24's average players, and I haven't played there as much as most other players I come across. But my time there still had a lot of meaning to me, and I have some real fond memories. Fond memories that I don't seem to have as much or at all on any of the other shogi sites. As much as I like and love some of the other shogi sites, I don't know if I quite have these super fond memories. Getting in a game or two before work and having the result of that game or games dictate, pretty much how I felt through the rest of the morning. If the game went well, I was, walking. I used to get into the office early, so I'd be going to get coffee while no one else is there. I'd be walking around getting coffee. And, if I did well in my Shogi Club 24 game, I had a spring in my step. It's like, I had a nice little accomplishment. But if I lost one of my Shogi Club 24 games, it was just like, I'm replaying it in my mind, wondering, what happened, or, just that sort of not great feeling of, having lost something. So, I will say that's a fond memory. I think, and this always pops into my mind when I think of Shogi Club 24, my late night epic battle with user Orange County. I still remember the name Orange County, which went for over 2 hours and 220 plus moves, if I remember correctly. This was, I could almost imagine the lighting. I was sitting in the kitchen at the table. It was late at night. It was sort of, the light of the kitchen was sort of low, and I could remember the sort of the feel of the darkness behind me from outside. It's like this meaningful remembrance of a game I played, some random Shogi Club 24 game that I played probably a year and a half ago or so. And yeah, the fun games that I had against Bro Cadfile. The username is Bro Cadfile, who I'll always remember, because I love the Brother Cadfile books and the TV series, and it's a username on Shogi Club 24. What else? The torturous moments of getting absolutely mauled by a 13 or 14 Q, only to look up the account after the fact. Once I finally figured out how to look up accounts, this became something that I used kind of as a coping mechanism, I think, a lot of times. But, I'd get mauled by this player only to look up the account afterward and see that they had played tens of thousands of games and had a much higher peak rating. So, the classic sandbagger, which they're at a rating of 150, a Shogi Club 24 rating of, say, like 150 or 200, and they have 25,000 games played and a peak rating of 1,100 or 1,000, and they just ran through me. All of those moments and more, honestly, it combine to make me feel that Shogi Club 24 is a special place that I will certainly feel nostalgic for in the future, if I'm not already feeling nostalgic for it as we speak. So, that was my feeling, I guess, in a bit of a nutshell. And then, what made or makes it's still here for 2 more months, a little less than 2 months. What made Shogi Club 24 special? This is tougher for me. I was thinking a lot about this. It's really tougher, and I've talked on stream about this as well. And I don't always have the same answer. I think I have similar answers. The themes are all there. And in discussing this with people, I've heard some good ideas that I've sort of incorporated into my own. But for me at this point, if someone said, what makes Shogi Club 24 special? I would say the, air quotes, feel of the game. To this day, no site has captured, for me, the feel of playing a competitive club game like Shogi Club 24. A competitive club, or even, not that I have much experience with this at all, a tournament game. There's something that I cannot put into words about when I am playing at Shogi Club 24. Perhaps it is the time controls, and I'll get into that a little later. But for a combination of reasons, this site most closely for me completely, or as close to completely as possible, captures playing a competitive club game of shogi. If you look at the site just superficially and you see that it's very much of its time, I think to say that when this site released in 1998, it probably felt a little dated. So 27 years later, it still feels very dated in terms of the user experience, the user interface, and pretty much everything but the pieces and board itself feel very, very antiquated. Yet these games, whatever it is, brings out that feel. It's, I don't want to say mesmerizing, but it's amazing to me. And I sometimes just sit and I think about that. Like, why? What have they done? What lightning in a bottle did Shogi Club 24 capture? And again, maybe this is all just exclusive to me. It's possible that very few people feel this way. I'm going to guess not. But this lightning in a bottle that they have done to capture the real feeling of being at a club. And I love the fact that their name is Shogi Club 24, because maybe that was the goal. Maybe that actually was one of their goals, or I think it's just Kume-san, his goal. And to this day, I think nothing matches it. Besides that, the variety of time controls, they are all nice for thoughtful games. You can play a 30-60 game, 30 minutes with 60-second Byoyomi. You can play 15 minutes with 60-second Byoyomi, which is the time control I have been playing mostly at Shogi Club 24 since I started streaming, like around a couple of years ago. So I think I've been almost exclusively, if I'm not mistaken, playing 15 minutes with 40-second Byoyomi. They have, I think it's 0 or 1 minute with 30-second Byoyomi. So they have essentially just a 30-second Byoyomi time control. And then they have non-Byoyomi. So they have a great delay-based time control, which is called short 2 in their drop down. Short 2 is a 30-second delay with a 60-second main time. What that means is, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, I apologize that I'm repeating things that I've talked about a million times before. This is every move, you have 30 seconds to make the move. If you don't make your move in 30 seconds, time starts being taken down from your main time bank, and you lose on time if that main time bank goes to 0. So if you are playing all your moves in 30 seconds, you will never take away from your main time bank. So for example, move 1, I take the timer is at 30 seconds, main time 60 seconds. You take 15 seconds to make your move. The clock ticks down to 15, and then it resets to 30. Next move. Let's say you take 5 seconds. You take 5 seconds, the clock, the delay time lowers to 25 seconds. You make your move, it gets reset to 30 seconds, and your main time still is at 60 seconds. Let's say on the third move or the fourth move, you take 40 seconds to make your move. Your delay time will go all the way to 0, and then 10 seconds will be removed from your main time. So you'll have 50 seconds on your main time. On the next move, let's say you make it in a second, your delay time goes to 29, make the move, it gets reset to 30, and your main time is still 50 seconds. So apologies if that is a confusing way to describe it. I'm still struggling with ways to describe this time control. It should be relatively straightforward, but that's it. And I think it's a great time control. This is the one that I believe I used to play most often. It doesn't take too long, especially if your opponent is blitzing. So that's the thing. A lot of the Shogi Club 24 players, regardless of the time control, will play pretty quickly, especially in the opening and middle game. But if you're taking 30 seconds or you're thinking about every single move, you have enough time to think, but the game will still go by pretty quickly. And in my experience, they're generally faster to much faster games than 15 minutes with 60-second Byoyomi. But like I said, that's what I have used to play more short too. These days I'm playing more of 15 minutes, 60-second Byoyomi. And then they also have, they have Fisher time control. They have a time control, which I believe is called Short 3. This is a 5-minute main time with a 5-second increment. And I believe this is the same time control that those Abema tournaments play at. They play either, I believe, 5 minutes with 7-second Byoyomi, or I think I've seen 5 minutes with 5-second, not Byoyomi, 5 seconds with 7-second, 5 minutes with 7-second increment, or they play 5 minutes with 5-second increment. I feel I may have gotten seconds and minutes mixed in there. But anyway, the Shogi Club 24 Short 3 time control is a 5-minute main time with a 5-second increment. So what that means is after every move, you get 5 seconds back on your clock. So you start with 5 minutes. Let's say you take 10 seconds. Your main time is now 4 minutes and 50 seconds, but add 5 to it. Because you make the move, you get 5 added. So now your main time will be 4 minutes, 55 seconds. If you make your move instantly, so in almost no time, you'll get that time back. So you'll be back now on your second move. You play it, let's say, instantly. You'll be back to 5 minutes. So first move, you took 10 seconds, got back, you were refunded the 5 seconds of increment. Next move, you took no time, you were refunded 5 seconds. So now you're at 5 minutes. Let's say on your third move, you take 0 seconds again. Or let's say you take 1 second. Now your main time will be 5 minutes with 4 seconds. 5 minutes and 4 seconds. So you will have more main time than you started out with. It's a great time control, and it is used heavily in the chess world. It is used heavily in the Go world now. It's taking over, I believe, a lot of the Go world. It's the standard format, I believe, in American Go Association, I believe in European Go Federation, and in a Korean Pro Baduk League, among others. So I believe it's taking over, and it's the only of the main shogi sites that supports it. That supports Fisher time control, Fisher increment. And 5 minutes with 5-second increment, I think is a great choice. It's probably the fastest time control on Shogi Club 24 in terms of it's the fastest, I think, guaranteed time control. Because, like, obviously, if there's a 30-second Byoyomi game, people can still just play all their moves in 25 seconds, and it's going to it's going to be a slow game. You can play a nice, slow and thoughtful game with 30-second Byoyomi. But 5 minutes with 5-second, it's going to be quick. And I think it equates to probably a little longer than a 10-minute Kiramake sudden death game, I believe. But it's great. It's great. I would play it more on Shogi Club 24. If this was on Shogi Wars, as I've said before, this is the only time control I would play on Shogi Wars. 5 minutes plus 5 Fisher, or 5 plus 3 as well. It'd be the only time control I would play on Shogi Wars. But among, if the other choices were 10 minutes, if the other choices were still 10 minutes, 3 minutes, and 10-second Byoyomi, I would only play 5+5 on Shogi Wars if we had this hypothetical time control. So that's great. They've got a lot of mix. You don't have separate ratings between them, which I think for me kind of, even though the ratings are so meaningless on Shogi Club 24, I do like having a rating there. I do like having it there. And in a 1560 game is, for me anyway, is still different than a 5+5 game. Even if 5+5 games can be very thoughtful, they are definitely different for me. My skills are probably the same on a 1560 versus a 3060 versus a 1030, for example. But a 5+5 Fisher is more blitz, I would say. So it's got this variety of time controls. And also, one thing that I think makes Shogi Club 24 special, and I don't know when this was added, but it has the near instantaneous engine, AI generated game graph after playing. So you can get a sense of how the game proceeded, what kind of mistakes you made, what kind of mistakes the opponent made, who had chances, all that kind of stuff. It's almost instantaneous, and it's right in your face, and there's no cost to it. So Shogi Club 24 or Shogi Wars, with Shogi Wars, you can get that. But you've got to use Kishin analysis tickets, which, if you run out of them, cost money. And for most people, you won't have many of these. So even for me, who has a lot of these, actually, I don't have a lot of them anymore because I've used them on stream to analyze. And so you cannot, without spending probably significant money on Shogi Wars, you cannot analyze every one of your games in that way and build a graph. But on Shogi Club 24, they just do it. On Leash Shogi, someone might say, inevitably you're going to get people anytime, well, on Leash Shogi you can do this. Well, yeah, on Leash Shogi you sort of can, but once you click that button to get a game analysis, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 10 to 20 minutes or more, and rarely shorter, to get that graph. So you may have already moved on with your day. So like on Leash Shogi, if I play a game, or if I've got a game that I imported and I want to see a graph analysis, I'll do it. I'll click the button and then I'll just go away. I'll just go away and come back later or the next day and be like, okay, now what did this look like? And I'll take a look at it. It's a great feature on Leash Shogi as well. It's just not remotely real time. So I think those made Shogi Club 24 special to me. But I've got to say, in all fairness, Shogi Club 24 was not perfect and is not perfect. As I mentioned, the UI, I think, would have felt dated even when the site came out in 1998. And I think the site, when it came out in 1998, I believe it was Java. I believe it was a Java app. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. And as time went on, there became a web version that looked a lot like the Java app as well. For example, I have seen 8-year-old videos from Urashina Ryu channel where he's playing on Shogi Club 24. And it doesn't look anywhere as nice as it does now. I'm not sure if he was playing the Java version or if that was a web version. I'm not sure. But the site has improved. The look and feel has improved over the years. But UI and UX, user interface and user experience wise, it is very much of its time. It's also difficult to register for new players. It was, how many times have people, if you're on the Discord or in any way related to the Western shogi world, how many times have you seen people have trouble trying to register to Shogi Club 24? I think a lot, and to the point where every time someone would do it, I would point them to a guide, Killer Ducky's guide. And I believe that was either podcast 2 or 3 where I mentioned getting started in shogi, and I talked about Killer Ducky's guide. I'll link it in the show notes, of course. This he had a nice write-up, including sort of the magic. It's not earth-shattering or anything like that, but you need to know this magic of getting a phone number accepted into their form. And because you had to register with a phone number. So it was difficult to register for new players. And my understanding is a lot of times, even after you did register, you wouldn't get an account. So you'd have to email the webmaster, who I'm told has always been very responsive. Maybe that's Kume-san. I assume that's actually Kume-san responding to those emails. And you can get in. But anyway, it's difficult to register for new players. And I think that you potentially holds people out, especially I think people in the West who might be experienced with other game sites, where these sites, chess.com, Lichess, etc., video game sites, they're bending over backwards to get players. So they want your experience of signing in to be very easy, very straightforward. It's just not that way on Shogi Club 24. So that's one thing. Another, I'm going to have a sip of water first. As I mentioned before, the sandbaggers. I think this is when people talk about cheating and when people talk about cheating as this terrible sin of online gaming, and obviously, of course it is. Of course it is. I actually think for beginners and for the growth of the game, I think sandbaggers are a bigger threat. Sandbaggers or smurfs, I think they are a bigger threat to the community or the player base than cheating. Because cheating, maybe people are getting better at it. I don't know. But you sort of know. And either way, if someone's going to cheat, they're going to cheat their way out of your rating. So it's like, if someone wants to cheat at the lowest levels, it's almost like it doesn't matter that much. I'm not justifying, I'm not letting people off the hook. But it almost doesn't matter so much because, they're going to be so far ahead after, they beat you and then they move on. So they're not a constant assault on new players. Unless you have tons of cheaters, which is another problem. But regardless, a sandbagger, on the other hand, lives and just sort of lurks at that lower level where beginners are trying to get their feet wet in the game. Someone comes in, they sign up on Shogi Club 24, they put themselves as a beginner, or maybe they're a 7Q on Shogi Club, on 81 Dojo or Shogi Wars. And they're like, okay, I've learned how the pieces move. I sort of know how to play the game, but the games are a little random, a lot of tactics decide them, etc., etc. They come into Shogi War or Shogi Club 24, set themselves up as a beginner, and they play someone who's 15Q, which is the lowest rank. Shogi Club 24, the lowest rank is, I believe, BG, which is beginner, and then 15Q. And so someone comes in, they set themselves as a beginner, or they set themselves as 10Q. Let's say a 7Q Shogi Wars player is like, yeah, I've learned the game. I know how to play. I win some, I lose some. I'm not the worst. So they don't set themselves up as BG. It'd be the same problem if they did. But let's say they set themselves up as okay, I'll conservatively estimate myself at 10Q. They go in there and they match up against a 15Q or a 14Q, like I mentioned before, who has thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of games played, plays their opening instantly, and it's Joseki, and they've got good end game and they've got good middle game, and they just crush this player, and I think that's pretty demoralizing. I think that's demoralizing to new players, where it's like, oh gosh, I know how to play, but this person is the lowest level on the site, and they're crushing me. And especially as a new player, you probably don't know how to look up the other player. And in the UI, you can't just double click on someone's username to see stats about them. So you have no idea that this person is actually, you can confirm that this is a sandbagger, that this person actually has tens of thousands of games played. So it's like, okay, wow, I just got crushed. All right, well, let me play again. Crushed. Let me play again. Crushed. You're just playing 15 Qs and BGs or 14 Qs over and over, and you're just literally not winning any games. Not only are you not winning games, you're not even competing in games. I think that is a real problem for a site that wants to attract new players and wants to grow their player base. Shogi Club 24 at some point became known as the site for strong players. So maybe only strong players sign up to the site. But I think that's a big miss. And it robbed them of the opportunity to have a bigger player base, more rich and more excited. So, along those lines, I'll say that the rating system is out of whack. It's just out of whack. And someone could say, well, rating systems are only there intended to match people, so there is no out of whack. But I'll say it's completely different than the other sites. Up until about the 3 to 4 Dan 81 Dojo range. So there is a document, and I will link it in the notes, that does a good job. I think it goes with my experiences, but a good job of showing the comparison of 81 Dojo ranks versus Shogi Club 24 ranks. I think Shogi Wars ranks would be interesting as well to put in there. But Shogi Wars ranks are similar, I would say, similar-ish to 81 Dojo, probably a little deflated. So like a 2Q or a 1Q on Shogi Wars could be a Shodan on 81 Dojo, for example. But either way, you have on Shogi Club 24, you have Shodans on 81 Dojo who are 10Q on Shogi Club 24. It's wildly out of whack. And when you have out of whack rating systems and a slightly lower player base, you can't do things like matchmaking or have meaningful matchmaking. So I think that is another area where Shogi Club 24 wasn't quite so perfect. Getting into some little more minor things, the peace sounds were off. It doesn't seem to have bothered them, and maybe for some people it became nostalgic and quaint. The peace sounds are very chunky. When you don't snap a piece on Shogi Club 24, you clunk a piece on Shogi Club 24. So if you compare it to 81 Dojo, say, which has a beautiful sound for the snapping of the piece, Shogi Club 24 does not have that. I'd also say that it's tough to deal with sort of anomalies in the system. It's tough to deal with quitters. I guess I'll say, if someone leaves the game, especially in English, I don't know how much better the explanation or the UI is in Japanese, but in English, it's very difficult to figure out what to do when someone leaves a game. How to resume the game, if you can resume it. How to get your rating points if someone quit at the end of a rated game instead of resigning. It's very hard to get that. And, I have left, I'm guessing hundreds of, not that this matters, but I'm guessing I have left hundreds of rating points on the table on Shogi Club 24 as a beginner. Obviously, not saying I would be hundreds of points higher than I am now, because I would have lost those points in subsequent games. But like I have games that were winning or completely, the game was completely over, we can say, and the opponent quit. And at the time, especially early on, I simply did not know how to do anything about it, other than just go back to the lobby and play a new game, and then the game just doesn't count. So that's something that I think every game site should do a decent job at. Like, if you run a game site, you have to acknowledge that there are going to be quitters trying to save rating. And so you have to be able to deal with that. And they chose almost not to deal with it. It's slightly dealt with in some situations. You can close, you click the close button, not the buy button, but the close button. And then you say, wait for resume. You have the option to wait for resume. You don't use the option of just close. And then you close. And then that puts you in a waiting state where you can wait for the opponent to rejoin you. And if they don't join in 90 seconds, you get the win. Sometimes if someone leaves like in the middle game, early in the game, I don't know how they decide this, but you don't get that option to take the win. You're out of luck. So it's a real strange. So it wasn't perfect, but it was special. It was special, and I'd say great. What can we? What are the potential missed opportunities for Shogi Club 24 on reflection? Now that we know that they're closing down, or Kume-san is closing it down, along the lines with what wasn't perfect, what potential missed opportunities were there? I simply can't help, again, but think that something could have been done to make the site more friendly to users, to new users, and less friendly to sandbaggers. There has to have been a way to deal with that. I don't know. Sandbagging problem does not seem to be something in the chess world. I don't know. Maybe chess players can chime in the comments, and I'll read them, in a subsequent episode. But I don't seem to ever have felt that sandbagging is a problem in chess. Maybe it is, and I just never saw it. But I do know that sandbagging, also in my limited experience playing Go, way back when, sandbagging was also a problem then. Cheating wasn't a problem. Well, I guess back in the day, I guess it was nice. Back when I was playing Go, you couldn't cheat, as far as I know. There were no engines that could beat single-digit Qs, I think, even. So there was no cheating, but there was sandbagging. I definitely remember sandbagging. I don't know. So I don't know if that's just a cultural thing, sandbagging instead of cheating. But I have to feel that there's something that they could have done to make the site easier for new players. Not only easier for new Western players, but I would say easier for all players, because sandbagging would affect everybody. Also, as a missed opportunity, I think, and obviously this depends on how much Kume-san wanted to put into it, what his skill set is, those kind of things. There's a lot underneath here, but I think updates to the UI, to the user interface, to modernize just a bit, while sort of integrating playing, Kifu management, analysis, and account management, could have gone a long way toward competing more with Shogi Wars, competing or beating Shogi Wars. Shogi Wars is a mobile app, and they probably had more money to invest in it. They're a company, so competing might not be capital C competing might not be the most important thing or even realistic. But as a place where people could go to just live shogi, just like chess.com is, just like lichess.org is, this is a place, if you want to play chess and you're a chess.com person, you go to chess.com. You can play. You can analyze your games. You can do puzzles. You can learn. You can do training there. You can manage your account on that same site. I mean, it sounds weird to say an online site should have integrated account management, but like the account management for Shogi Club 24 is separate from the actual logged in Shogi Club 24 playing experience. Like they're like separate things. And you can't almost do anything with your account just by putting your locality. So I think that would be nice. That would have been very nice. The tournaments even built in there. I know they had tournaments that didn't seem to ever happen. I never saw them running. But I really think that is a potential missed opportunity. No continuity plan, I think, is a huge missed opportunity. So I'm going to read back what Kume-san said. I had been thinking about retiring soon, but as we have not yet developed the necessary personnel to take over, it has become difficult to continue Shogi Club 24 beyond next year. So that was I don't know if that's a conscious choice or if there was an attempt, but essentially, there's no one to take Shogi Club 24 over. So if Kume-san would have, thankfully, everything worked out for him, but like 10 years ago, if Kume-san would have been hit by a bus, it sounds like Shogi Club 24 would have it would have kept running, obviously. It would have kept running until the first technical problem, and it would have never come back, ever, and people wouldn't know about it. So there's no continuity plan. This is a site that's been there for 27 years. Like I said, there are people with tens or hundreds of thousands of games played. People love this site, myself included. And there was just no, the fact that it's closing because the owner of the site just doesn't want to run it anymore. I think that's very sad. I think that's really sad and unfortunate. The potential missed opportunities, and maybe this was never his goal, but I think monetization was a potential huge missed opportunity for Kume-san and for Shogi Club 24. As far as I know, there are two ways in which Shogi Club 24 tried to monetize or has some sort of monetization. For one, the mobile application, not the web application, but the mobile application, if you want to play more than one game per day on the mobile application, you have to pay a membership. And I wouldn't have paid this, but I looked into it, and it did not seem like there was any way for me as someone outside of Japan to pay for this. It seemed like it did not. When I looked, it was not like Shogi Wars, where you click the button if you're on the phone and you go into the Apple Store and you're doing an in-app purchase or things like that. It was nothing straightforward, and I do not believe you could do it as someone outside of Japan. So even if I wanted to pay them, and generally, as I've said before in the past, the sites or the software that I enjoy using and that I want to see succeed, I like to support them financially. So like I would have supported Shogi Club 24 financially, had the option been there. So there's that aspect on the app. I believe in their analysis page, I've used Google Translate and I go through and I click things and try to get there. But where I mentioned you can get the graph of the game, the instant graph of the game after you finish it for free. in there you can move pieces around and see the lines that the engine suggests. It appears that you can pay them to do analysis, to do further analysis, like say, oh, what if I do this? Now what is that engine about? Like those kinds of things. It looks like you can do at least engine, AI assisted engine analysis in that analysis page in post game. And I think when reviewing your games, I think you can do this. But again, I could find no way to pay them money. I was going to do it to pay them so I could see what it's like, just to see what the future, just to see what the feature is like. And I was not able to find any way as someone outside of Japan to pay them for this. And obviously, it may not have been a big deal for them to miss that monetization, because how many people in the West even play Shogi? Not many. How many people in the West will actually pay for Shogi? Even fewer. So it's possible that they're not missing much by missing my $5 a month or my $10 a month or whatever their charges are. But I wonder how many people, even Japanese players, I wonder how many people know about these monetization features, if those actually were monetization features as I understand it. So, I think they really could have done that. But speaking of that analysis page, I don't know how many people knew about this feature, but I've mentioned it on the Discord and I think on stream before. But Shogi Club 24 had or has an opening explorer. This is in many ways one of those holy grails, as far as I'm concerned, for Shogi learning and for Shogi analysis, is to have an opening explorer where you can play your moves and play speculative moves by your opponent or whatever your opponent did, and you can see, okay, this variation now you have two options, or here are all the options. If you play this move has a winning rate of 30%, and here are 17 games where this has been played. Something like that. So it's something that chess.com has it. Lichess has the best, as far as I'm concerned, of anything I've used. Lichess, Opening Explorer. You go in there, you push your king's pawn 2 squares forward, and it shows you see a huge list of candidate moves now, each with the win rate and sort of variations from there. So it's like, okay, so let's say my opponent played in response to me pushing my king's pawn 2 squares. I'm not going to use a notation. Let's say the opponent moved the pawn in the same file 2 squares, and that all of a sudden you do that, and now you see all sorts of other candidate moves now for you to make, and with the win rates and things like that. So you can drill into positions and see what other players have done and what the win rate was, and you can just play through variations, and you can, on Lichess, you can filter the games for the database. You could say, okay, I only want to look at Grandmaster games. What do Grandmasters do? And you can get that. But I think what a lot of people find useful, myself included, is, all right, I want to see amateur games. And on Lichess, you could say, I want to see, I think, between like 1700 and 1900. Or I want to see Masters and 1700 and 1900. You can set this range. So it's like, okay, beginners. This is something that I've talked about a lot of times, about the state of like Shogi DB2, for example, or the state of trying to learn from pro games. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for me as a former Nakabisha player and as now an Urashino Ryu player to get meaningful information, at least in terms of opening repertoire, from professional games, because very few players play Urashino Ryu, and even very fewer players would play the weird oddball stuff that my opponents play against Urashino Ryu. So this problem showed itself with Nakabisha when I was playing Nakabisha, and I learned Nakabisha and I built my opening lines from Satomi Kana, the greatest ladies player who's ever lived. I found her games on ShogiDB too. But the thing is, her opponents don't play a lot of moves in response. There isn't a lot of variation in those pro game responses to her openings. So certainly not the same reasonable variety that amateurs would do. And so I have to build my own in conjunction with discussing with people and with the engine, and trying to think it out myself. But if you just look at pro games, it's going to be next to worthless for so many of the kind of moves that you'll see in shogi games, where amateurs, they just don't play the same things. They play everything is in the air or up for grabs when you play amateur games. And so that's where an opening explorer backed by millions of amateur games like Lichess, all those games get put into the database and they make it better as time goes on. And anyway, Shogi Club 24, actually, this is something I've been calling for. I've been wishing for this on Lee Shogi as well. I've been wishing for this since the beginning, to have this, because if you know of chess software, you see where we're lacking in shogi software, and I think this is one of the huge places. But anyway, Shogi Club 24, they had it. If you log in to their analysis page using your Shogi Club 24 credentials, the analysis page is in that post-game graph view. In there, after you log in, there was the ability to get metrics based on positions, with graphs and win rates, among other things. So very similar, not as elegant as Lee Shogi, of course, or not as elegant as Lichess, for example. Of course, Lichess's Opening Explorer is just so elegant, and elegant and fast and easy to use. This is not quite that, but it's in the same class of software. It was difficult for me to make sense of with translation, having to translate this page, because it's only in Japanese. It's not localized at all. It seemed that the database that Shogi Club 24 used was 1.5 million games up through 2022. So it's not as many games as, for example, Lichess, of course, which has, I assume, hundreds of millions to billions of games potentially in their Opening Explorer. But 1.5 million games, and for whatever reason it stops at 2022. This would have been an amazing feature if they updated it and grew it. And by growing it, I mean expanding the features, but also sort of updating the database as time goes on with games played on Shogi Club 24. Like, how valuable would that be to have an entire database, searchable database by position, of every game on Shogi Club 24, which has the highest level amateurs. Shogi Wars also does, but the highest level amateurs and tons of amateur games at all the levels. Not as much of the beginner, but that's fine. It would be amazing. I would have absolutely paid for this feature if they would have done that and made it possible for me to pay them. I'm holding up money to the screen, like, take my money, Shogi Club 24. I want to support you, but they just didn't want it. So that feature was awesome, and almost nobody talks about it. On the Discord once, I think I mentioned it and put a screenshot, and I don't think anyone else had even seen it. So anyway, what can we learn from this closing of Shogi Club 24? Without updates to the software and services and sites do go stale. I realize this doesn't hit as hard because Shogi Club 24 lasted the test of time. 27 years is an old man in website terms. Like, that site lived a long time. And they did have updates, through their life. So it's not like they didn't have updates. But it does go stale, and it does need to be maintained, and tastes change over time, and preferences change, and it needs to evolve. And so, like, it never evolved to handle new users. I think it never handled or evolved to handle the types of games that Shogi Wars made popular or became popular off of. What if Shogi Club 24 had kept updating the site over time, improved the user experience, and had Blitz in addition, similar to how chess.com. You can play Blitz, you can play slow games, etc. What if Shogi Club 24 had 10-minute Kiramake and 3-minute bullet and things like that? The option to play those before Shogi Wars did. So what if Shogi Club 24 had a nice, and maybe not even perfect, just a nice user interface and supported all those time controls? Maybe they could have been, not chess.com, but maybe they could have been a healthy, thriving site 20 years later. Who knows? Who knows? But it never grew. Never really updated. Also, what else can we learn from this? Any site relied upon by thousands of users, thousands of humans and souls and shogi-loving souls out there, any site that is relied upon by these people should really have some sort of plan for managing the site in the event of the inevitable, which means the inability of the original creator to keep doing it. And it feels a little selfish to say, oh, Kume-san, you should have done this. You should have done this. You should have done that. He made a site that has made thousands and thousands of people happy and has helped the shogi world for 27 years. So it feels a little selfish to be saying, well, you should have done this. You should have done that. But like, I would have gladly supported that, and paid for it. And just, he must care about this software. He must. I have to believe it. He did a great job. It's a site. It's gotten so popular. So I'm not criticizing him. I'm only saying that a site like this really should have a plan for dealing with the exit of the owner. Anyone can get hit by a bus. This is why, even in companies where it's one person doing all the work, you still want to have 2 or 3 people on that person's team. Even if it holds that person back a little bit, you still need to have someone on that team just in case that person quits, dies, gets hit by the bus. That's what they call the bus factor. You've got to do that. And the site, I imagine, would be continuing if he could find someone. So I don't know if he just didn't want to find someone, or if maybe he was hoping that someone would pay him to take over the site. And I don't know. But it's really sad to leave it this way without having someone step in to take it over. Yeah. I think that's a key. 81 Dojo feels, just to bring up 81 Dojo and Lee Shogi, I suppose. Lee Shogi is a little less relevant in terms of shogi sites, but 81 Dojo, it also seems, and I am no expert, I am no insider, it seems like it is also one person, Hidechi, the one of the all-time greats, Hidechi, still running it, but barely. Just barely. The site just recently went down again, Still can't use a guest. Registration is still a problem. And if he got hit by a bus or just decided to throw his computer out the window, 81 Dojo is dead, will stay alive until the server crashes or until the software crashes, and then we'll never see it again. Lee Shogi, I believe, is also one person. One person who I believe, I am told, is not even a shogi player. So this one person has done this incredible service for the Western shogi world, and so it feels, again, a bit selfish to say, but like, and it's not their responsibility, but they put this out there. If they go away, Lee Shogi is going to die because that person owns the domain, and the SSL certs and management credentials to take care of the machines and software. And it's open source, so someone theoretically could fork it and create a new, like, newly shinleeshogi.org or whatever, run it and pay to put it up there. But either way, that'd be a huge disruption. And so this is a problem in the shogi world. Lee Chess has a huge team that they're still the core person running it, but and developing it, as far as I know, here in 2025. Chess.com obviously is a fully staffed company, making sure that their site stays on. We don't have that outside of, we have Shogi Wars. Shogi Wars is a company that's keeping that going, but Shogi Wars is a mobile app. It's just a mobile app. It's not like a full-on site and community of shogi players. So I think that's a real learning experience. But anyway, on the positive side, what is next? What's next? I have hope for Shogi Wars. I have some hope for Shogi Wars. Let's read that tweet again from Shogi Wars. I'll just take the second paragraph of it. In the future, Shogi, and again, this is translated. They did not release this in English. They only said this in Japanese, but here is the translation. In the future, Shogi Wars will offer an account linking function with Shogi Club 24. This has been done. You could log in to Shogi Wars right now if you haven't already. Link your Shogi Club 24 account. It'll pull your data as of that day, and you will get, so it'll say like it'll show your peak Dan rating or Q rating. It'll show that, and then at the bottom it'll have a disclosure. It'll allow you to open up and see more information about like the number of games you've played, the number of games you've won, the number of games you've lost, your current rating, and your max rating. So it'll show that for Shogi Club 24. It doesn't update. So for example, this weekend I unlinked my account and then relinked it so I could pull in the new data since I had linked it before. So it's kind of sketchy. But anyway, that feature exists, and they continue. So we will offer an account linking function with Shogi Club 24, as well as an environment where players can play auto-matching matches under the 24 rule time limit. So how I am interpreting that is that Shogi Wars is going to add time controls similar to what Shogi Club 24 offers. I don't know how many or all, or if they'll replace any of their existing time controls, but I am still cautiously very optimistic about this. Obviously, Shogi Wars is a mobile app, and even if you play it in the browser, it's a mobile app in the browser, so it's not ideal for playing. The pieces are smaller than they need to be. It's clunky. It's designed for tap and not designed well for tap, so it's even worse for mouse. So it's not, their UI is not great, but they have thousands and thousands of players. Shogi Wars has the biggest player base online. So if they add some of these time controls, maybe not all of them, Maybe they don't add 3060 and 1560, or maybe they let you just offer games. I don't know. We'll see. I'm obviously hoping for that Fisher 5+5 time control to make its way to Shogi Wars. But they also said with auto matching, and I think this is a huge key, that Shogi Wars is in a not unique position because Shogi Quest does it as well, but in a good position to run matchmaking, which I think is a huge factor for the success and enjoyment of these games, where you don't have to go and post a game and wait for someone to invite you, or wait for someone to accept it, or you go to look at the available games and you accept it. Like, that's, for some people, that's a non-starter. For me, obviously, I do it, but I don't like doing it. I would much rather have a matchmaking system that quickly and easily puts me together with someone at my level, and I play a good game of shogi, and if I win, I go up and I play harder players, and if I lose, I go down and I play weaker players. That's the dream, and that's what Shogi Wars has accomplished better than Shogi. I mean, Shogi Quest, I don't have much experience with Shogi Quest, but in my limited experience, it's not great at having a good balance of that factor where it's, I win, I play someone better, I lose, I play someone worse. It feels a little random, but Shogi Wars has that really down. They've got a lot of players, and their ranking system is relatively robust. People have complaints about it. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. And if they can bring that to these Shogi Wars time controls, I think that's going to be amazing. I'm going to also be even more hopeful that this spirit of this message is that Shogi Wars is also going to introduce a nice, good website like chess.com kind of style, where you have Shogi. Chess.com has a mobile app, has a great mobile app, obviously better than Shogi Wars mobile app, but they have a great mobile app that's great on mobile. They have the desktop app, which is great, in the browser. So Shogi Wars, if they did that, that would be even better. So if they bring in that feel of Shogi Club 24 with, by having a browser-based playing experience and the time controls, something great would come out of this. And I almost wonder, because there is this integration with Shogi Club 24. I said before that, Kume-san, it would have been nice if Kume-san would have created this continuity plan. Maybe Shogi Wars Heroes, which is the company behind Shogi Wars, actually did step up and offer to maybe this is the continuity plan. And maybe they're paying him some money and, buying some of the rights to this stuff, and sort of taking the torch and running with it. So maybe, I'm going to be glass 3/4 full on this one and say that maybe the continuity plan that I'm saying doesn't exist actually might exist. And maybe Kume-san is going to walk away happy. Heroes, the company behind Shogi Wars, is going to walk away happy. And we as users will still have a place to play these time controls, and maybe even play them in a way that's better than we remember with Shogi Club 24. So, I'm cautiously very excited. If that makes any sense. I'm cautiously very excited. There's also the possibility that what this will do will be to trigger an influx of players to 81 Dojo and Elite Shogi, the alternate sites. Shogi Wars, I think, also will probably get an influx of players. As I listened to some people, I listened with dubs and with subtitles on YouTube to videos that I've seen made from strong Shogi Wars YouTubers about their experience with Shogi Club 24. They all left Shogi Club 24 a while ago after they got their peak rating, or because they like Furuta, for example, the that amateur champion and former Shorikai player. He talked about the importance of matchmaking on Shogi Wars. He likes to click the button and play the game, and I think most people do. So maybe this shutting down of Shogi Club 24 will be the final kick in the pants of those Shogi Club 24 players who haven't already moved to Shogi Wars. And I suspect that's going to get a lot of it. But it is possible that we may see an influx into 81 Dojo and to Lee Shogi. The 81 Dojo has all these registration problems, and it seems like scale problems. So maybe they won't be able to deal with it. Who knows? We'll see. Lee Shogi, has its sets of problems that might make it less palatable for people coming in from other sites or just Shogi fans in general. And so they may not, people may come from Shogi Club 24, they see Lee Shogi, they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else. After they see some things that they don't like from Lee Shogi. I don't think Lee Shogi, without getting into too much about Lee Shogi, I don't think they focus very well. I think they're missing some key items, both for making matches and for actually playing the matches. And it's also very slow to update. It's faster than Shogi Club 24, but it's got the same problem with the single person running it. So there's that. So I am most hopeful, I guess, in terms of what's next. I'm most hopeful for the Shogi Wars aspect of it. I would love to be able to play these games against a wide variety of players, with matchmaking even, and with friends. And then if Shogi Wars does more to make an actual proper website with embedded analysis, gosh, that would be, I don't need it. I don't need a Shogi site as nice as chess.com or as nice as Lichess. I don't need that. I would take it and I'd support it financially and emotionally, forever. But even something lower, just something reminiscent of that, I think would be something that I would support. Again, both emotionally and financially. I would love to see it. So I'm hopeful. I am cautiously, like I said, very excited about what's next for Shogi Club 24. And on that note, I think that's really my thoughts on this. How long have I been going? An hour and 20. Did not expect to go this long. So apologies if I rambled as I do, but this is a topic and this is a site that really is meaningful to me. And I am sorry to see it go. So, thank you to Kume-san. Thank you. And good luck to Heroes and Shogi Wars for what I hope to be taking over the site, and my thanks as well if that is the case. And thank you to all the opponents that I've played over these years on Shogi Club 24. Not just Orange County, not just Bro Codfile. These people that they live in my head. Just these good memories of these games, and just everyone I've played, even including the Sandbaggers. Thank you for the games, and I hope to play you again in the future, wherever we land coming out of Shogi Club 24. So that's going to be it. Thank you for listening, and please do remember to like and subscribe. I would tremendously appreciate it, and I will talk to you all later. Take care, enjoy your Shogi, enjoy the remaining 2 months of Shogi Club 24, and have a great day. Bye.